1945, World War II came to an end. Nazi Germany surrendered, cities lay in ruins, millions of people were homeless, and Europe was struggling to recover from the most destructive conflict in human history. It seemed that peace and reconstruction were finally ahead. But behind the scenes of global politics, a new confrontation was already beginning. Former allies, the United States and the Soviet Union, were rapidly turning into rivals. Both nations understood that future power would be determined not only by armies and territory, but by technology. The question was not simply about military superiority, but about global dominance for decades to come. That is why the attention of the victorious powers quickly focused on German scientific developments. During the war, Germany had achieved enormous technological progress. Jet aircraft, such as the Messerschmitt, advanced submarine technology, navigation systems, chemical research, medical experimentation, and most importantly, the world's first long-range ballistic missiles. These innovations stunned Allied experts, who realized they were looking at technologies from the future. One weapon in particular captured global attention: the V-2 rocket, a breakthrough that effectively opened the door to the space age. It was the first guided long-range ballistic missile in history, capable of traveling beyond the atmosphere and striking targets hundreds of kilometers away at supersonic speeds. Unlike bombers, it could not be intercepted by the air defense systems of the time. For military strategists, this meant one thing: warfare had changed forever, and the future would belong to rockets. The man behind this revolutionary technology was German engineer Wernher von Braun, a brilliant and ambitious scientist who had worked for the Nazi regime. American military analysts quickly reached a troubling conclusion. If the Soviet Union obtained scientists like him first, the global balance of power could shift dramatically. Fear of Soviet technological superiority became a powerful motivation for American action. In the emerging Cold War, time itself was becoming a critical factor. It was in this atmosphere of urgency that the United States launched a secret program known as Operation Paperclip. Its mission was to locate, secure, and transport German scientists, engineers, and technical specialists to America. Officially, the program was supposed to exclude individuals deeply connected to Nazi ideology or war crimes. In reality, however, the situation was far more complicated. Many of Germany's leading scientists had been members of the Nazi Party, worked with military institutions of the regime, or conducted research in facilities that used forced labor from concentration camp prisoners. American leaders faced a moral dilemma: uphold principles, or secure a strategic advantage in a future conflict with the Soviet Union. Gradually, pragmatism prevailed. The Cold War was beginning, and the knowledge these scientists possessed was considered too valuable to ignore. American intelligence agencies launched a massive effort to locate German specialists across Europe. Some were found in destroyed laboratories, others among prisoners of war, and still others in territories that would soon fall under Soviet control. Scientists were offered a deal: relocation to the United States, safety for themselves and their families, funding for research, and the opportunity to continue their careers. For many, this offer meant escape from the chaos of post-war Germany, potential prosecution, or life under Soviet authority. Hundreds agreed. Eventually, more than 1,600 scientists, engineers, and technicians were brought to America. Along with them came families, equipment, blueprints, documents, and entire scientific archives. Their records were reviewed and sometimes deliberately altered. Compromising details were softened or removed, while professional achievements were emphasized. A new reality was emerging. Yesterday's enemies were becoming part of the American scientific establishment. The most famous participant in Operation Paperclip was Wernher von Braun. During the war, his V-2 rockets fell on London and Antwerp, killing thousands of civilians and destroying entire neighborhoods. The rockets were produced in factories that relied on forced labor from concentration camp prisoners, many of whom died under brutal conditions. Despite this history, only a few years after the war, von Braun was living in the United States, where his expertise became central to America's rocket program. He quickly rose to prominence within the U.S. Army's missile development efforts, and later became a leading figure in the American space program. Under his leadership, the Saturn V rocket was developed, the most powerful rocket of its time, capable of carrying astronauts to the moon during the Apollo missions. In a remarkable transformation, a man who had once built weapons for Nazi Germany became a symbol of scientific progress, an American technological triumph. His story illustrates how dramatically political realities of the Cold War could reshape personal destinies. The impact of Operation Paperclip extended far beyond space exploration. German specialists contributed to the development of ballistic missiles, aviation technology, navigation systems, medicine, chemistry, and numerous military projects. Their expertise accelerated the growth of the American defense industry and strengthened the United States in its geopolitical competition with the Soviet Union. In many ways, the scientific legacy of the Third Reich became integrated into the technological power of the United States. This provided America with a significant advantage during the early years of the Cold War and helped shape the strategic balance between the two superpowers. At the same time, however, increasingly complex ethical questions emerged. Was it justified to cooperate with individuals connected to a criminal regime? Was it acceptable to overlook the past in the name of future security? And where is the line between pragmatism and moral responsibility? For many years, Operation Paperclip remained classified, and the public knew little about its true scale. Only decades later did declassified documents reveal how extensively the United States had used German specialists after the war. Historians uncovered evidence of altered biographies, concealed political affiliations, and active involvement of these scientists in American military programs. These revelations sparked debates about the cost of technological progress and the moral compromises made during the Cold War. The story became a reminder that international politics is rarely simple. Yesterday's enemies can become tomorrow's allies, and strategic interests often outweigh ethical concerns. In an era defined by fear of nuclear war, decisions were made quickly and decisively, often without fully considering their long-term consequences. Operation Paperclip was not merely a program to relocate scientists. It was part of a broader struggle for technological supremacy that would define the Cold War. It symbolized an era in which science, politics, and military strategy became inseparably intertwined. The story demonstrates how fear, ambition, and the pursuit of security can reshape the moral boundaries of entire nations. Even today, it raises difficult questions about the price humanity is willing to pay for progress and power. Despite its strategic importance, Operation Paperclip was never entirely uncontroversial within the United States itself. Some politicians, military officials, and intelligence officers expressed serious concerns about cooperating with former Nazis. After the war, the American public had been deeply shocked by revelations of the Holocaust, concentration camps, mass executions, and human experimentation conducted by the Nazi regime. Against that backdrop, the idea of recruiting German scientists connected to that system appeared morally troubling. Supporters of the program, however, offered a pragmatic argument. If the United States did not take these scientists, the Soviet Union certainly would. In the context of the emerging Cold War, that risk was considered unacceptable. Fear of geopolitical rivalry gradually outweighed moral hesitation. Decisions were made in an atmosphere where the future balance of global power mattered more than the past. The Soviet Union was indeed pursuing German scientists and technology with equal intensity. Soviet forces transported equipment, research materials, and specialists from Eastern Germany into Soviet territory. This created a sense of urgency, a race for knowledge, sometimes described as a battle for brains, in which each side tried to secure as many scientific resources as possible. In some cases, scientists chose which side to join based on personal safety, ideological beliefs, or opportunities for their families. For many German specialists, the United States appeared more attractive because of economic conditions, research funding, and living standards. Others ended up in the Soviet Union and contributed to the development of Soviet missile and space programs. As a result, Germany's scientific legacy was effectively divided between the two future superpowers, intensifying the rivalry that would define the second half of the 20th century. Over time, former German scientists gradually integrated into American society. They received citizenship, worked at universities, research institutions, and military laboratories, and many became respected professionals. During the space race, some were even viewed as national heroes. The public primarily saw them as scientists, not as individuals with controversial pasts. America's technological achievements, satellite launches, missile development, and the moon landing created a narrative of progress that overshadowed the complex origins of those successes. Wernher von Braun's transformation was particularly striking. From a weapons engineer in Nazi Germany to a leading figure of the American space program and a public advocate for space exploration. His career demonstrated how rapidly public perception can change when political contexts shift. As years passed, however, questions began to emerge. Historians and journalists examined archives, declassified documents, and personal records. Gradually, it became clear that the scale of Operation Paperclip had been larger than previously understood. Some scientists had closer ties to the Nazi regime than official accounts suggested, and their pasts had indeed been modified before their relocation to the United States. These discoveries sparked renewed debates about whether the decisions of the American government had been justified and what price had been paid for technological advantage. The questions were not only political, but philosophical. Can scientific achievements be separated from the moral context in which they were created? And does society bear responsibility for benefiting from knowledge developed under an oppressive regime? Operation Paperclip also reflects a broader pattern in world history. After major conflicts, victorious nations often absorb the resources of the defeated, including knowledge, technology, and expertise. Science rarely belongs to one nation alone. It becomes a tool of power for those who can control it. During the Cold War, Scientific advancement was directly linked to military strength, nuclear weapons, and global influence. The competition for scientists was therefore a competition for the future world order itself. The United States sought technological superiority, the Soviet Union sought to catch up and surpass its rival, and the world found itself caught between two systems armed with increasingly powerful technologies. Today, Operation Paperclip remains one of the most controversial chapters of post-war history. On one hand, it contributed to scientific progress, space exploration, and technological innovations still used today. On the other, it stands as an example of how political interests can lead nations to moral compromise. The story reminds us that progress is rarely pure, and that humanity's greatest achievements sometimes have complicated origins. It also shows how powerful fear can be: fear of enemies, fear of the future, fear of losing dominance. That fear often drives decisions that reshape history. Ultimately, Operation Paperclip was more than a secret program. It was a story about choices between morality and security, principles and strategy, past and future. It became a symbol of the Cold War's beginning, an era when scientific discovery, political ambition, and military power merged into a single global struggle. And perhaps the central question of this story remains relevant even today. Can the ends ever truly justify the means when the fate of the world is at stake?